But I think that works in terms of thinking about a sequence. And I think for students at lower secondary, that's probably the big picture that they need to have. Um, when I'm teaching, I like to sort of hone in on things. So if it's something like the Great Depression, I try and divide it up. It's a bit crude, but I talk about what aspects of the economy are externally oriented.
Mm,
So which are more internal in terms of local economy. Where is the impact felt most? And you can trace through people like Low Ka Seng's work, for instance. You can see a very clear trajectory. It's people like Tang Ka Ki that have the rubber industry, tin. The impact is felt by industries which tend to be geared internationally, so driven by international demand. If you're someone that has a small agricultural holding, you're probably not as badly affected because you're not affected by those global sort of dips and surges as such. So in a business history course, we try and split it up a little bit and get students to think about why for some merchants they were, or some entrepreneurs were able to sort of ride out the Great Depression because their interests were much more locally oriented. Those that were harnessed to global demands for things like, supplying the automobile industry were hardest hit. So even in a very basic sort of rudimentary understanding of business history, you get a sense of some aspects of Singapore's economy as a port were so closely linked to or dependent on international trade and demands, whereas others were very much about the local economy. Right. So that's I think quite a helpful split. And that's why you see, so for rubber and tin, the story is quite dramatic. Pineapple is one that I like to look at because Singapore, of course, was a great center for pineapple production, and it sort of surges and declines. And the first is because there isn't the technology to keep the fruit from spoiling. So you've got the production on a large scale only for it to spoil because they can't ship it out in time. And then you have the advent of canning and cannery sort of technology. And this sort of leads to a boom in pineapple, right, as one of the commodities. I like to use it because it's along the Singapore River that had a lot of the canneries, and I think it's a good sort of teaching point to think about something like pineapple, that Singapore was one of the global centers. That tends to collapse around the time of the Great Depression because people don't eat luxury goods, and it was considered a luxury to be able to offer pineapple. It was something we take for granted, I think, in Singapore, but it was considered really a luxury item to be able to show off that you had canned pineapple. So when you have the Great Depression globally, people just stop buying it. So again, you sort of see that external versus a more internal local economy. Don't know if that's helpful, but that's the way I try and teach it when I'm looking at general education courses. And this is where you're trying to teach, whether it's engineers or science students that don't necessarily have a very strong humanities background, right? So one of the ways we do it is through that larger story of the commodities.